I don't either.
Sometimes
Sometimes,
logging back in, out and logging back in helps.
yeah.
I see that we are now live, Mr. Chairman.
All right, then we can proceed with roll call.
Wayne Clark,
Yes.
Karen Gale,
Yes.
Jim Lisinski,
Yes.
Don Niemer,
Here.
Alderman Weigel,
Here.
Alderman Haas.
Here.
We have and Jerry Motter.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll proceed with the next first item on the agenda. Item
We have-
1.
Mr. Chair, do we have to approve the minutes?
We do not have
Um,
minutes.
They're holding the minutes tonight. We do not have no minutes to approve at this time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Item 1, resolution to consider amendment number 2 to the purchase and sale agreement by and between 6 Points West Alice Apartments LLC and the Community Development Authority of West Alice relative to the development finance agreement north of National Avenue, Nona. Patrick, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, what we're doing here is cleaning up one of the items related to the finance agreement with the development agreement with Mandel Group. I'm going to let Sean outline this. We're taking care of this because the money that comes back, this has the potential to help support the SONA development at a future discussion. But this is something we can take care of now, wrap this issue up, and we move on to the rest of the development agreement at a future meeting. Sean?
Patrick, like Patrick had noted, this is an amendment to the development agreement between the CDA and Mandel Group for the development immediately north of National Avenue, north of the Farmers Market, called Nona, and about 66th and National. It's a 177 unit apartment building. It was completed this past year, has reached stabilization. They've gone to permanent financing, and now we're finalizing some terms within the agreement as far as some payouts from the Mandel Group to the Community Development Authority, and then really to FIRE, the new market tax credit entity. FIRE provided 2 loans through the CDA to this project when it was first put together because of the amount of risk involved. Banks would only finance it to X amount. And so in order to bridge that gap, FIRE provided a few loans, and this is sort of setting up the payback to those loans. Some key things took place that really put this into a good place. These loans weren't necessarily guaranteed to be paid back, and so this is the success of the project is really leading to this payback. It was a record lease up of 30 units a month. The rents came in as projected at about $1.50 a square foot, and that all allowed for a very quick stabilization, and then just the extremely low interest rates. It was projected at 5.5% interest, and it was underwritten that way, and it came in at 2.85%. So those things have allowed this project to get to the point quickly, about a year ahead of time, where paybacks can take place. And so this amendment is to set up for those paybacks. There are 3 payback items in the amendment. The first of which you see on the screen here is already complete. It's the initial FIRE CDA loan of $1.5 million that was paid back when the project went from construction financing to permanent financing. And so that is done, and there was a little bit of interest on top of it, so it came in at $1.54 million. The second element is a construction savings agreement that was part of the agreement with the Mandel Group between the CDA and Mandel, and that was set up so that if they did save money, because the CDA was a major partner in the project, if they save money, the CDA asked that they also get some money back. And so the project did come in under the estimated construction costs, and the CDA is going to get approximately $650,000 back. That'll be paid off in sort of 2 installments. One will be right after the agreement is signed, if the CDA agrees to it, and the amendments then put forth and signed, and they'll pay it out at that point. And they'll hold about $100,000, as there's just a one final DNR closure issue. And so once it is closed out by the DNR, which is expected to happen really any day or any week now, that 100,000 will be released as well.
Just on a note on the construction savings, we did have an outside consultant review the construction draws to make sure that all of them were in line with the budget, or all the expenses made sense. Like there weren't additional savings or anything.
Mr. Chair, a question for Sean. When do you expect that final payment to be made?
So that 100,000
Yes.
on the construction savings. So it's really in the DNR's hands, and so we're just the site has been capped. It's done. The DNR just really needs to sign off on it, and it could happen. It's been in their hands for a few months, and so we're just kind of waiting for them to sign off on that, and that closes out the project, and then they can release that last 100,000. So it's hard to say, Wayne. It could be tomorrow, and it could be in 2 months.
Thank you.
The third element is related to the $2.5 million loan that Fire, through the CDA, gave to the developer due to the amount of risk and gap in bank financing that took place at the beginning of the project. And this was the last thing that's been finally negotiated here. The way it's proposing, and we've agreed with the developer to potentially set this up, is that they would pay the authority $1.5 million upon signing this agreement if the CDA were to approve it, and then the developer will continue to pay interest on it over the next it would be, I guess, 7 years now, and then where it says letter C here, where it says 10 years, it's actually really 7 years from now. The authority would receive then the final $1 million to fully pay back that $2.5 million loan. And there's sort of a bonus here. The authority would then share anything over 15% IRR, which is basically the amount of money that the developer and the investors would be making. The authority would then get an additional $500,000 if it was there to be shared. If the project is as successful as it looks like it might be, it looks like it could be there, get an additional sort of $500,000 on top of that 2.5. And so this is what we're asking you to take a look at. We'll be happy to take any questions that you have on this.
We utilized SB Friedman to review the agreements as well, to make sure that there weren't any other savings or money that was and how this was structured. We negotiated this out for the best of the CDA, and we feel we're recommending this amendment as something that should be approved.
Mr. Chair, question for Patrick.
Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
Thank you. What is the expected property tax payment to the city from this project?
I believe it's almost $230-some thousand. Am I close on that, Sean?
Yeah. Yes.
That would start next year?
I think we already started getting payments in this year. We have it structured as a developer funded TIF. So the increment, it's kind of municipal revenue obligation. The tax increment that comes in goes to the developer, and we have that structured for the next 20 years.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Patrick or Sean? If not, can I have a motion on the resolution?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, we'll take,
Just a vote.
excuse me, Patrick, a vote. All in favor would use aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it, resolution passes. And we're going to go to item 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Patrick can go through them at his leisure, and then we'll go into closed session for a couple of them. Patrick, you have the floor.
For Alice Yards, there's been a number of inquiries about the status of the project. I did have a meeting with the developer last week. I wanted to share that there's some positive news. There seems to be movement on the financing of the hotel. We're waiting. They have a feeling within the next 2 weeks or so that they will have a finance commitment from a bank. We don't know what those terms will be yet, but the bank has expressed interest not only in the financing of the hotel, but the purchase of the new market tax credits that were obligated for the project. There's around a $14 million new market tax credit allocation. The financing that's needed for the hotel is around $9.5 million. I have a feeling that there will be items that we'll have to review here at the CDA, but we'll wait to see what these terms are. I think in the recent weeks, it's positive news when I think 3 hotels were announced in downtown Milwaukee. So there is maybe some movement. We're all waiting for this COVID situation to resolve. And I think the industry might see some changes, but the vaccination probably cannot happen fast enough in that case. The residential component, they have been working with a construction firm to get some firmer construction numbers on the proposed apartments. So they're trying to get accurate pricing to develop their pro forma. And they suggested that within 2 weeks, we would have a detailed financial pro forma. And that's one of the conditions that as staff we requested, not only to look at the feasibility of this because it's in a TIF district, but to evaluate the quality. And later on, I think we'll have an update on our housing market study that just we received last night. But there is a demand, but we want to make sure that we preserve the quality of housing that's been established here with the recent projects. And we need to look at the performance to do a full evaluation of that kind of concept here. And the office development, well, with COVID, the office market has changed. The market has changed. There's Johnson Controls moving out of the downtown, a number of office development subleasing. I think evaluating the office component, whether it's all office or you incorporate some sort of advanced, maybe manufacturing, as well as some more type of engineering or advertising firms into the building with residential. There's some examples of this down in downtown Milwaukee along Water Street, where you kind of need to think outside the box a little bit because the idea here is talent attraction, and many businesses are looking to have those convenient housing, places to live, close to amenities, with offices nearby. So he's reevaluating that type of layout of a building versus just 100% all office. They are making proposals, maybe for our requests for proposals that are out there for office users. And we have referred some inquiries about office space to the developer, but they're just evaluating where they are in the position of the market right now on that. So that's the update we have on Alice Yards. Gladly answer any questions.
Mr. Chair, Alderman Weigel.
Go ahead, Mr. Alderman Weigel.
Patrick, on the residential, when are we going to expect to see a plan commission submittal on this thing? To see what it's really going to look like, what they're really going to build.
Right. I could probably see that in the next 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
And they have invested a great deal of design, not only into the office buildings, but into the design of the apartments. So they are interested in advancing that development. I don't know if it'll advance this year, but there's a few pieces that have to fall in place relative to parking and, but they are focused on from 70th Street all the way over to the park in terms of the residential. I think they proposed 281 units.
Yeah.
In that development.
I'm just curious to see when we're going to see those pretty pictures that are going to go to plan commission. So, okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for item 2? If not, Patrick, you have the floor. Go to 3.
On this item, we'll discuss this on closed session on St. Aloysius Church. Per the last direction of the CDA was to submit an offer on that property, and we'll provide an update in closed session.
Thank you. You at item 4?
674951 West National Avenue, as we've advised before. The brewery is interested in purchasing the Perfect Screw site. They've received municipal approvals through Plan Commission. And per last week, it sounds like they have maybe a soft commitment from a bank. We prepared packets with the partners of the brewery. We worked with them to prepare packets to submit to 25 different banks. And during this COVID time, it's been challenging to attract financing. We're going to go over a little bit of the financing structure inside, but there's some additional costs that have come up. And one of the main ones is the utilities. Now, if you look at this image, you can see the Perfect Screw building. We have above ground utilities that pass through the site. And not only do they feed power to the Perfect Screw site, but they also provide power to our other development site, 6771. And if you also look, you can see poles. Sean, you go back to the previous slide. That migrate south here between the two properties. There's a parking lot behind Perfect Screw that was part of the Milwaukee Ductile Foundry that the CDA owns. And these are all above ground utilities. The above ground utilities feed the Perfect Screw site. So at the front of the building. So the power access for 6771 is coming across the front facade of the Perfect Screw building and then over to the adjacent property. And I think I have the next slide that we can outline. You can see their proposed site plan. So currently where the red line is, that's where the poles are going between the two properties. And they go along right where it's a proposed addition. That's right where the electrical panel is inside the existing building. So that is where the power lines are across the front facade. You go to the next slide. So here's another image of those power lines going south. And at this point, they go underground. So there's some sort of box or manhole in the ground at that particular spot where the utilities then go in a different direction. Now, on those poles that go across the front facade is not only the power feed to 6771, there's something that We Energies identifies as a main line. So there's a main line power that goes along those poles, and then, as I mentioned before, goes underground. So it provides other power to other areas, and there's nothing connected to it. Also to the right or to the east of the railroad spur that's there is current infrastructure poles that go along the railroad spur and continue south. Now, I don't know what's all on those poles, but one of our things that we want to talk about with We Energies is maybe if we can move this main line to those poles or some manner. They came back with a proposal to address some of these utilities, and I think we have the image of it here. Now you can see on the faint brown line, that's the existing Perfect Screw building. The power that feeds the Perfect Screw would come, this is looking west is to the top, across the spur, and then they could connect by adding another pole at either the northeast corner or the southeast corner of this site. But what We Energies designed was burying the entire utility system underground that you can see here with these hatch marks. And then the main line would go south and attach to another pole and then be buried underground and then down towards Mitchell. The cost of this came in at $220,000. And that is the estimate to do this particular work. Now it seems early, and this is something that we need to evaluate. That took around 5 weeks to almost 2 months to get that estimate from We Energies. It's a slow process. Getting power to 6771 might be a challenge if it's terminated at the brewery site. But it seems like they could bore into National Avenue and then feed the building. But without knowing where the development at that stage would want their utilities, it would be probably premature to invest the money to put that power underground until we know where they would want their electrical panel. I think the mainline expense is something it's up to the CDA here tonight if they feel like the removal of the poles is important. But if we could put that underground, it does clean up the image of that area, and as well as it help not impede traffic movement through this area between the parking and then people going to the event space in the 6771. That's one of the things that did come up at Plan Commission is the placement of these poles and traffic and necessary barriers that would need to be around them so nobody would hit them. As you can see right now, they're pretty exposed out in this particular area. Gladly answer any questions you may have on this, but we are evaluating the cost of these poles and putting them underground.
Mr. Chair,
Go
I
ahead,
would,
Mr. Clark.
thank you. I would certainly think that there is great value in cleaning up this area and trying to go underground if at all possible. And I'll look forward to your report on what the final cost might be.
Sure. I should be clear that the cost of putting these underground, as much as we'd like to assist the brewery in their financial needs, I don't think the brewery could support putting those underground. The taxable value of the renovation of 6771, I mean, this is a cost that could be put into that particular project, but it's most likely a TIF cost. UHS is something where we did not have any TIF costs other than getting some of the site cleaned up. So any increment that's gained off of that project is part of this TIF, could help alleviate those particular costs.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Patrick. Are there any other questions for Patrick regarding these items? Well, then I think, Patrick, just proceed with whatever you're doing to see what else you can come up with the development of this situation.
Right. There is one more issue related to the brewery, and we'll deal with that in closed session.
All right. And item 5, Patrick?
I think, as we mentioned before to the CDA, COVID has impacted the hotel industry, and the Holiday Inn Express has expressed need for financial assistance. This is a headline from the Renaissance Hotel that was recently constructed in Wauwatosa, where the Community Development Authority approved in June of this year a $305,000 loan. I understand the loan is a forgivable loan, and it was paid with CARES Act funds that came from community development block grant funds for the COVID impacts to the community. This hotel, as well as our hotel, opened at the same time, with the hope of the Democratic Convention occurring. They had a performer that, is not hitting their particular benchmarks, and we'll talk a little bit about that in closed session.
Thank you, Patrick. You want to go to item 6 now?
Yes. It's 6. Sorry that it's misnumbered on the screen, but go ahead, Sean.
Thank you. Yeah, this is just a brief update on the 68th and Mitchell TIF 14. The property adjacent to the brewery that Patrick was just talking about with the We Energies issues discussed is, as you know, we have a letter of intent with the Whitico Development Group, and they continue to work on this. They've now hired an architectural firm. They've actually done they've submitted a window restoration option to the Department of Energy to try to seek some grant funds. So they have to mesh that in with doing what's allowed to get historic tax credits. So it's a kind of a touchy. The windows are the challenge, and so they've really have they're progressing on trying to figure out how to work that. So they're waiting for Department of Energy response on their window concept. And they're working through tenant options, and the main thing here is, they still have a commitment from the main Milwaukee event user that they have they have a solid commitment from. It's actually they're also kind of an investor in the project, and then they're just working to fill in around that. So we're working. We've got a draft development agreement going with them, and so we continue to work through those details as well.
The National Avenue corridor, one thing to note is the development helped, or I should say Physicians Realty, who owns the current property, was kind enough to lease this particular site out to the health department for helping with mass vaccination efforts. The city will be leasing the building to help with that process, and they're doing it at a very generous rate to help meet those needs. Just a nice relationship for a property owner to offer that assistance here during this time. However, at the same time that happened, there's probably a medical user in the market exploiting this building. So this property is on the market, and we hope to attract a user to the site. 1323 South 56th Street motor casting site. I think the CD has expressed some interest in what's occurring at the site. Tomorrow night at Safety and Development and prior at last week's Common Council meeting, there was a public hearing on the rezoning of the motor casting site from M1 to commercial use. The motor casting site comprises of 3 parcels. If you can go back to the previous image. You can see here 133947, 1323, which is the main foundry and office. And then there's a 6500 parcel, which was their yard or lay down yard for the foundry. When development toured the site with the prior owner, one thing we noted was that there was reuse potential of 133947. It's kind of a warehouse space, open floor plate, has that nice industrial look. This is something that many businesses or commercial uses have interest in restoring or having that patina of a aged brick look in their office space. As we are in the midst of this rezoning, one thing that's interesting is that there is a potential manufacturing use that has expressed interest in acquiring 133941, and development here is working with them to see how we can make that happen. The owner of the property has been in, who's out of Indiana, has been in communication with us, saying if that sale of that property happens, that helps with funds to help raise the additional foundry. Their goal is to raise the particular site. It's in bad shape, and people have been getting into the foundry. And we're concerned as in terms of economic, what happens in this area. Commercial seems like a proper use because we did have some vision concepts that were prepared for the community that showed residential, maybe office in this particular area. But our goal here with manufacturing in a residential area would be something that is advanced. It can be assembly, it can be very clean and have a lot of engineering and still fit well within the neighborhood context. Blast Cleaning Technologies is located just to the west of this site, which we worked with, and they refurbished the Knowledge Chalmers area to the point where it's almost like an airplane hangar on the inside. Very clean floors. They're doing welding and manufacturing and are very quiet. They still have trucks that come and employees and some traffic, but it's really more of a quiet use within the area. I think we would see that here. You would have trucks, but it wouldn't be any common difference than a commercial user using the property with deliveries and pickup if it was a bakery or a fitness place with people coming and going. You still would have traffic. So as staff, we're probably recommending that the southern property be kept manufacturing and the commercial zoning be put in place at 1323 and 6500 as we try to attract these type of new modern advanced uses into our community. I'd gladly answer any questions you may have on that.
Mr. Chair, Alderman Weigel.
Go ahead, Alderman Weigel, you have the floor.
Patrick or Sean, could you go back to that plan view? The other one with just more of a schematic. I'm just wondering how the potential new Washington Street connection with the DOT's proposing putting Washington through from 60, yeah, that one. Not the, it wouldn't be the Washington that we see here, but they're gonna, the Washington on the, yeah, that's, go back to that, go, yeah, that. DOT's talking about extending Washington from the west going east all the way to 60th Street. And I'm just wondering, that's going to give better access to the north end of this, and would that make it more valuable for commercial use then? Because right now it's all kind of tucked in there on 65th Street.
Right. And one thing unique about that parcel, when you stand there, it does have a higher elevation. It's probably hard to imagine, but when you're there, and if you went up a floor or two, if you're at the Blast building on the 3rd floor, you can see the whole skyline of Milwaukee.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with access with a road to the site, no, it's not on a very visible path, but if Washington Street was put through, yes, it has potential to offer some value for whether it's commercial apartments or other use. There is value in that parcel.
Yeah, we're gonna have to rename one of those streets because we're gonna have apparently two Washington streets that are parallel to each other.
Weigel Street.
Because no, I was not thinking that. Haas Lane. So, thank you.
Very good question. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Patrick? Do you have any other items on this list, Patrick? Do you
And
wanna
one more thing.
discuss?
Sean will highlight the housing market study. As we mentioned earlier, that we just got the study last night and we've done some initial review. We hope to have more of a formal presentation, maybe a joint presentation with Common Council and the CDA, because it'll help us evaluate multifamily proposals that we see that there will be more interest in our city for that. And I'll let Sean kind of highlight some of the things that we've learned from it.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, so we just did receive this housing residential market study from Tracy Cross and Associates. Read through it pretty quickly here, and it is very positive, as we had kind of previously reported. It looks like, you know, there's plenty of residential demand and of all types, both, you know, multifamily. They also highlight, you know, the use of bringing a new housing type in row housing. Or row housing and townhomes, as well as they had certain single family floor plans that they think could be highly successful, and had some pretty good you know, for sale numbers tied to them. You know, before we want to you know, sort of pour through this in detail before we report it out, you know, in detail. There are definitely some things that need to be worked on, but you know, it's very positive news as far as how it, you know, potential development opportunities and the demand, you know, it appears like it would be there from a residential standpoint, and not just multifamily. Multifamily is certainly you know, what we've done, the sort of mid-level multifamily, but there are also other opportunities as well in lower density categories as well. So we were looked at in the West Dallas market area was looked at in this, along with Greenfield, Greendale, Franklin, and New Berlin. We were tied in as one market area. So when you see 425 units per year, it is tied into those other markets as well. They don't have much proposed right now in those markets. Greenfield has about 100 apartment units sort of in the queue to be built. So, you know, if we're aggressive and ready, we can sort of tap into this potential demand. And so that's kind of what it's saying, but we will certainly report this out in more detail when we flush it out. Be happy to take
Thank
any
you, Sean.
questions.
Patrick, anything else?
I don't believe we have anything more, sir.
All right, then we will go into closed session. For the agendas, items 3, 4, and 5, the committee may convene in closed session pertinent to the provisions of section 19.85/1/E of the state statutes for the purpose of delivering the investing of public funds whenever competitive bargaining reasons require a closed session. The committee may convene in open sessions after completion of the closed session to consider the balance of its agenda. Can I have a motion to go into closed session, please?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Been moved in second. Can we have roll call, please, Patrick?
Wayne Clark,
Yes.
Karen Gale,
Yes.
Gerald Otter,
Yes.
Jim Lisinski, Don Niemer,
Yes.
Alderman Weigel,
Aye.
Alderman Haas.
Aye.
Just one more